Good evening. You are listening to Rainbow Radio. This is In My Humble Opinion with Nice Guy Eddie. I am joined tonight by Christian Beranek and Kelci Crawford, the writer and artist behind the webcomic Validation. So, Kelci, Christian, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Just to start off, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves? I guess, Christian, you can go first.
I'm a comic book writer. I write the webcomic Validation, which Kelci does the artwork for, and she also writes some stuff too for it. I also do music, work on films, photography, and I'm looking to write for comic books for other publishers, so looking into that as well.
And Kelci?
I am a webcomic artist. I work with Christian on Validation as the artist. I also write the Roxy Weeks that occasionally make an appearance on there. I also write and illustrate the following webcomics: Johnson and Sir, and Charlie and Clow, and Mini Comic Theater. And I am the artist on the webcomic Seeing Him, to which my little sister is the writer.
Okay.
She laid that out on you hardcore. Right? She laid it down.
Here, let me just verbally spew my resume.
Well, and just so we can find all this stuff, and we'll mention it a couple times, but the website now, Validation is validationcomic.com, correct?
That's correct. Because validation.com was taken already, which we were really upset with, but what are you going to do? It was probably taken back in like 1996 when it was like register.com was the site everybody used back then.
Yeah.
They paid $35 for URL. It was crazy. So anyway, validationcomic.com is correct.
Yes.
And and Kelci, your site is also it's kelcicrawford.com, is that right?
It's kelcidcrawford.com. That's KELCID Crawford. I have to spell out my name because a lot of people misspell my name. It's like a professional thing that I got to do to spell out my name.
Hey, they got to be able to find the site. So tell us a little bit about Validation. What's it all about?
Gosh, what is Validation about? It's about a girl named Allie who is transgender, and she basically is just trying to live a good, fulfilling day-to-day life, and she has all this stuff that happens along the way she has to deal with, but she also has a lot of amazing friends and family that support her. She's a total geek. She loves comics. She loves manga, anime. She loves doing the cosplay of her favorite character, Zeta Wonder Gal. She likes to go to conventions. She likes to play the board game Tiny Unicorn. And her best friend in the world is her stuffed dinosaur, Mr. Dino. And he's sort of like the R2-D2 of the series. He pops up and has his own little personality.
Right. She seems to get a lot of good advice from him. I mean, psychically almost.
It's definitely a psychic.
Definitely a stabilizing character there. And you mentioned
Mr. Dino, you could say, is a thoughtful person.
Absolutely.
Thoughtful dinosaur.
Now,
that's a good title. That's a good title for a webcomic. Thoughtful dinosaur.
Thoughtful dinosaur.
Oh my God! Okay.
Yeah,
You do not understand, Eddie. Whenever Christian and I hang out at conventions, we'll hang out at conventions, and then she'll look at me, and we'll just say something completely off topic, and then she'll look at me and go, "That's a great name for a webcomic."
Well, I gotta admit, I would read Thoughtful Dinosaur. I mean, no question. I would definitely read Thoughtful Dinosaur.
God. That's $1 million idea. Thoughtful Dinosaur has to be. That's gonna happen.
So how did you two because you're in different parts of the country. How did you two come together? How did you find each other for this project? For Validation? Tumblr, okay.
Tumblr. Yeah.
Was it Tumblr or DeviantArt?
I showed you my DeviantArt profile because that was where my artwork was at the time. Right. But I found you via a post that you had posted on Tumblr saying, "Hey, I'm looking for an artist."
Tumblr is the most amazing site for comic books out there.
Huh.
I mean, you have to have one. I mean, everybody's on there and posting stuff, and it's just such a weird way to you have to filter through a lot of stuff, and somehow we found each other.
Kelci, was there something in particular that drew you to this?
It was a project that sounded interesting to me. I had never really done slice of life comics up to that point. The closest that I came was a journal comic that lasted a semester in college, and then it died.
when the semester was over. Did you get a good grade on it, though? Or no?
It wasn't even for class. It was just a fun thing that I did. And I stopped doing it because I was like, oh, there's other stuff going on.
Sure.
No, what drew me to the project was when Christian pitched it, I was like, well, it's a slice of life about a character that I haven't seen before and that I haven't drawn before. I want to put myself up to the challenge. And I contacted her and I was like, oh, please, I hope I get it. Please, I hope I get it. And then, yeah.
Well, she turned in like a sketch of Allie, and it was just perfect. I was like, don't even change a thing. And then I was like, all right.
No, wait,
He gave me a pretty good description, but I was like, I think I have an idea. And then I just drew it and I sent it over.
So that was perfect.
And as the main character, I mean, Allie's spot on. But I'm wondering now who came up with the description or the appearance for Roxy, because that was a little more out there.
Oh gosh, I think Roxy is. Kelci took my description and basically added a lot of her own personality to it.
Okay.
And I kind of feel like a custodian for Roxy, but Roxy to me seems more like stemmed from Kelci's personality in some ways. So. Okay.
Now, now how much of
Roxy's original name was Brandy, and it's a terrible name. It's a terrible name. Brandy's terrible, and then so basically, then I was like, well, what about Roxy? And then we spelled it a little bit differently than what you normally see. Like usually it's Roxy.
Right.
And a lot of people type that out, but I just like the XIE. It has like this like extra like pixie quality to it.
Which is well, so yeah, I guess you could say that's in contrast.
Yes, and now she has the equally unique burden of having a uniquely spelled name, just like I do.
See? That's where it goes.
There you go. So now, okay. So if Roxy has drawn a lot from Kelci's persona, how much of Allie's experience is based on your experience, Christian?
Mm-hmm. Well,
or how much of her personality is based on you?
Not really her personality per se, but a lot of her experiences.
Okay.
Some of her, and particularly in the newer comics, a lot of the experiences are based on some of my experiences.
Just so some of the stuff with the I noticed recently online harassment and street harassment seem to have been addressed pretty heavily.
Yeah, the street harassment scene with Bo was actually based on a real conversation that I had.
Oh wow.
I didn't want to have, but
who would?
Yeah, she told me about it like 5 minutes after, and I was like, "Oh my Jesus!"
Yeah.
You got to put that in there.
And so I assume that in just as in the comic in real life, the dude was a little bit off, but I can't imagine that makes it any less awkward or makes you any less nervous about the whole thing. Because wow, I'm talking to a guy who's a little bit off.
I think he was also a little bit horny. He was a little bit of a...
That doesn't help either.
No, thankfully it was broad daylight in a very public place.
Right.
But he was very curious about my situation. I just kept walking and walking and walking until finally I turned around and I saw him like staring at me with this big Bojangles cup in his hand. I was like, oh God, I gotta get out of here.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah. I thankfully don't have very many situations like that. But I think too with Allie, I sort of like idealize what her life is. It's like I wish that my life was like that when I was like 24, however old she is.
Right.
I didn't get a chance to experience like the things that she's experiencing at her age.
Right. Okay.
So it's sort of like a bit of a wish fulfillment on my part as well.
Okay.
So.
And just with regards to the online harassment thing. I swear to God, comic book fans are the worst. I mean, it's actually, you will get into worse discussions and trolling and shit flinging with them than you will talking politics with people.
or the comic book creators who secretly send me messages on Facebook saying that they want to go out with me and they're married.
Ew.
No.
A few times.
Oh,
yeah.
God.
That's worse than.
Yeah.
I can handle an argument because online. And that's the thing that's different between me and Allie.
Mm-hmm.
She gets super upset about stuff. I don't care. Because people, if you're going to argue with me, you're not going to win because I'm not going to argue back. I'm like, all right, you've had your say. just keep talking, let it out. And I just let them basically write themselves into a corner, and I'm like, are you done? Do you feel any better? And they're like, at the end of an argument with people, usually online they end up actually being my friends.
I've had a couple like that, but
yeah,
I have too much of an appetite for just diving right into the mud with them, and yeah. I think when we because and for those tuning in, Christian and I have talked before, and the interview was about I think it was about a year ago on the blog, and you'd given me some advice about leading a less drama filled life, and I. In terms of picking arguments with people, and I it's great advice. I cannot deny it, but I just can't do it.
You're passionate.
Well, you know what? That or I just like to poke a little bit. You know, you get somebody who's.
I totally get that. I used to be the antagonist in the family because I'm the middle child, and both of my sisters are like clones of each other. I swear to God. So like, if one was pissed at the other, I would just go over to one and poke the bear with the stick and be like, Kia did it. or like I would poke the other one and go, Kristen did it.
That is some really hardcore antagonizing. I appreciate
oh my
that.
God. It was both fun and awful because they would both take their revenge on me. Like really.
Oh yeah, it comes around. Now, one question I have to ask you guys, or actually Christian, about validation, and in the notes you saw I put it like bold and italicized and everything. Why the hell did you write Jim out? Come on,
he's not written out completely. he's just not her boyfriend anymore.
But what?
Did you like Jim?
I like Jim. I like the relationship. I like the relationship. I thought that was kind of a cool storyline, and I guess if there was nothing really more to explore there, I guess I can see why that might free her up for other experiences or whatnot. But I like the chemistry, and I like the relationship.
Well, I think we set it up for that to sort of happen with him leaving to go to either New York or Los Angeles, which we'll reveal at some point down the road.
Oh, okay. So when you're saying he's not written out, that's not just lip service. He's potentially. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
He'll be back. It's just that like if you remember at all the like the convention they went to and how he talked, he was very much into like building his career up. He had at one time been like a writer for the Big Two and had like a little bit of success. He wasn't like a big name, like a Bendis or somebody like that. He was like an up and comer. Mm-hmm. And then he decided to just go and like, I'm going to do my own thing because I'm not really into this corporate stuff.
Damn fool.
Yeah. Which he's going to find out wherever he's at in either New York or Los Angeles, he's going to need to work with the corporate people to get some money to pay for his horribly expensive rent.
Right.
Trust me, I survived 6 years in LA. I don't know how I did it, but I did. And
well, I think of it like Alec Guinness. I think of it like Sir Alec Guinness doing Star Wars, and he hated Star Wars and he hated doing it, but he's like, you know what? This is paying the bills, and after this, I can do whatever the hell I want. But I'll sell out. I'll sell out a couple times, and then I can be, I can pick my projects after that.
Well, I think Gary Oldman, the actor, tells his friends that all the time, and I'm hoping that's the person I'm thinking of. He says, you do one for the studio, and then you do one for yourself.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah.
Now, Christian, you've been writing for a long time. You got a lot of credits. Kelci, you've got several comics going on now. So I'm curious, who has it easier in the biz? An artist looking for a writer, or a writer looking for an artist?
Oh gosh.
I don't even know about that because like the only reason that I found the writers that I did, I mean, other than Christian, the other writers that I have collaborated with are my sisters. And that was just more out of, there was a story that I wanted to tell, but I didn't have the focus or the ideas to like script out the ideas into an actual story. So like with Kristen, I came to her and I was like, hey, I really want to do a short story for this anthology somebody's doing, but I can't think of anything. Help me. And she was like, oh yeah, I can definitely come up with something. And then she came up with this like 6-page mini and we submitted it and it was good. And with Kia, I was like, we both came up with the idea because we looked at webcomics presently and we were like, there are just not hardly any webcomics right now that are updating that are about a trans dude.
Well,
so,
we'll get to that one. I do want to ask you about seeing him. I do want to ask you about that. But Christian, what about from your perspective? What's been your experience trying to find artists?
Well, Kelci's like a major success story in terms of finding an artist. It's very rare that I'm able to work with somebody and have like such a rapport. And so, but beyond that, virtual hugs.
Oh, virtual hugs! Yay, virtual hugs!
Yay. Otherwise, it's a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
It's an absolute nightmare. Artists that I've met, super nice people. On my end, I like to at least give some money to help the project along.
Sure.
But even when that happens, sometimes artists will just fall by the wayside. It's just certain things pop up, and then they're gone. And then if you do have a successful book, sometimes their work will get seen, and then they'll leave you for somebody up higher in the...
Right, so you end up being the stepping stone for them to find something.
Yeah, particularly an independent level, you're considered a stepping stone. So
right.
Over the years, I've learned to understand that, and that may happen, and just basically try to get as much work done as possible on a project before they bolt and leave you. Fortunately, with webcomics, it's been really nice because you can take your time and pace out the progress of the book. And if, we got this book, Dealers, done, 128 pages.
Right.
Nick Ramo is an amazing artist who I want to work with on so much stuff. Hopefully the Eurozone will gel at some point to where he, because he lives in Italy.
Okay.
And that is a lot, young people in, Europe have a really hard time finding work.
Mm.
And you have to have work before you become like a big name, you know what I mean?
Right.
And get paid for art. So he's having a hard time juggling, getting paid money at a day job because there's very little work out there.
Right. Well, yeah, especially in Italy. Too. Italy's, their economy right now is not good.
But Nick his work is like Marvel DC quality.
Uh-huh.
I mean, he should be working, his style is perfect for Spider-Man or whatever it is out there. He would be amazing for any of those books because he's so great.
Mm.
But with having him do it a page a week, it wasn't that big of a commitment. And at the end of the day, we ended up with a 128-page book.
Right.
So that's where I'm at right now. Let's just take our time, do a page or two a week, you know what I mean? That way I can pay you some money and pace it out.
Right.
And so I found that to be more rewarding than just going in and doing a 4-issue miniseries for a comic book company.
Right. And now you brought up Dealers, and I got to tell you, because I had read it a little bit, I think because I was looking through some of your stuff when we did the interview last year, but I didn't read it through, and I just binge read it recently, and I'm depressed now. Thanks a lot. That was...
Why are you depressed?
You know what? I guess if I had to, and this might sound a little bit cornball, but as I'm reading it, the first 75-80% of it, as it progressed and as they became deeper and deeper into that dealership mentality, and they got into some of the dirty tricks and the hiding of the money, and I'm I'm reading the Breaking Bad of comic book and collectible toys. But then at the end...
That's the highest compliment I've ever heard for that story.
Well, I was trying to figure out, I'm well, it's not, I'm Goodfellas is, I'm no, there's these two guys, they start out with the best of intentions, and they just keep getting worse and worse and worse, and he starts lying to his wife, and his wife was totally Skylar White. I'm the parallel there was, I was but then at the end, and it was Phantom Menace, wasn't it? The Star Wars prequel killed it. As soon as they were going to see Phantom Menace, I'm oh, this is all going to go to shit now.
That's the climax of the story.
Absolutely.
And you is what's the fallout afterwards.
Right. And after that, and with him driving off in the U-Haul, to me, and I mean, don't get me wrong, what I'm about to say, I think the movie that I'm going to use as a comparison, I believe is overrated, but I guess it's considered classic. But to me, that to the 90s was what The Graduate would be to the 60s.
Okay.
And it's kind of it all kind of fell apart. Nobody really knows what they're doing. And he kind of drives off into the sunset. It's one of those where I guess it ends on a down note only relative to where the climax was. But yeah, I don't know. It wasn't a happy, it was a very ambiguous ending. It was sort of we're going on, our eyes are open, the innocence is lost kind of a thing. And And that's the kind of feel I got was like at the end of The Graduate, I guess, something along those lines. But
well, since Dealers is based on my life, and pretty much that last section is a lot of those conversations between the two of them. It's Gary and Tamara. Mm-hmm. That's based on real stuff that happened to me before in my past life.
Right.
Being cheated on and finding out that happened. And then me leaving with the U-Haul, that did happen. And so that was, but I do understand where you're coming from in terms of the ambiguity and then.
Well, you know how it continues. If it was based on your experience, you know what the rest of the story is. But where it cut off there.
Yeah, well, I had to cut it off because like, I'd love to come back and do. Well, I have a Dealers 2 and 3 like sort of mapped out.
But is Dealers 2 The Empire Strikes Back, or is it Attack of the Clones?
No, Dealers 2 is definitely Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, okay.
That's
I'd like to see that then.
Dealers 2 is actually about running an independent comic book company.
Oh, see, now I thought that's what Comic Book Mafia was about.
Oh no, Comic Mafia is a whole other thing.
Because I read that one too. That one and Post-Apocalyptic Nick. So I binge read. You
did do some binge reading.
Yeah, well, everything that was that you'd written that was on the Webcomic Factory.
Yes,
the Webcomic Factory site,
which I co-wrote those stories with Tony DiGirolamo, mm-hmm. who's a good friend of mine. I've known him since probably 2002 or something. And I don't think we got along back in 2002 or 2003 because I totally ganked his artist from him, Chris Moreno, and Chris drew Dracula versus King Arthur for me. But,
right, okay.
And I'm just joking around. Tony's great, but we sort of like had this moment to where we're like, you're okay and I'm okay, and then we were fine. And then after that, he told me about this idea for a webcomic called Super Frat, which is like Animal House meets the Justice League. I'm like, that's a brilliant idea. And then he is the one who actually convinced me that webcomics are awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, we started doing Super Frat as a webcomic on our old site, silentdouble.com, and we had a couple other webcomics too. And then from there, that's when I got bitten with the webcomic bug.
Right, okay.
And over time, he kept telling me all the time, it's like, we should do a webcomic.
Yeah.
You should do a webcomic. And then one day I woke up, I'm like, yeah, we should do some more webcomics. And it just clicked. And then with the Webcomic Factory, Dealers is one of the first ones we did. And to tie this all back in, we launched the Webcomic Factory in 2010 after I left Disney. So
Right. Now I do want to ask you about your time at Disney, but there was another one that I wanted to talk about first, and that was one of the recent projects, the one that's updating now, which is Real Talk.
Real Talk's fun.
Yeah.
Sadly, Jason Wren, the artist, who is really good, he has to move on and do other stuff.
So that's not going to be updating then, or on hiatus for now?
Not for a while. We were able to get 12, I think, comics out of it.
Okay,
Did you like it?
Well, it was very funny because it's and for those who haven't seen it, it's basically what you say versus what you're thinking, and it's kind of or what you do versus what you'd like to do if you could get away with it, or if you weren't spineless or whatever. But
exactly.
But I'm just I'll put it this way. I and when I think of my internal dialogue, when somebody cuts you off in traffic or when they get your order wrong at McDonald's or whatever, and of course nobody's going to wig out over everyday stuff, but in your head, you just wish you could pop up the machine gun or something and just kill every motherfucker in the room, or whatever.
Exactly. Then you totally get what Real Talk's about.
Oh, absolutely. And there was one. Now I remembered, and I can't. It was way back at the beginning of Validation, and there was one of those essentially with Allie. And this is where I've noticed. I think there's been a bit of character development with her because. It was an early. They were at the bar. They were hanging out. I think Jolene had misgendered her or something to that effect. And it was the panel of, well, now here's what's going to happen, and it's going to be awkward and blah blah blah. And it goes out, and then, but here's what I actually said. Oh, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Everyone makes mistakes. And it was exactly like that kind of a thing. But then, fast forward to the situation with Bo, and there was no diplomacy. There was no. Not to say that anything. She basically stood up for herself. It was a very strong response, and none of the
Okay. It's all right. I'm going now. It was right back at him, and it struck me that there was a bit of a change there. I guess like coming out of her shell, sort of a moment.
I definitely think that's the case too. I mean, and also,
I was about to say she's definitely come out of her shell since then, and I tried to like subtly kind of communicate that with the way that her design is, because in the first couple of strips, her hair's kind of like flat, but in most recent updates, her hair's just kind of like floofy and all over the place to kind of reflect the
little more life,
open nature that she has.
Okay.
Very like boom, yeah. I mean, it's a subtle thing, but it's something that I worked in there.
Right. And I was kind of wondering if there was going to be any more any more real talk style things with in crossing over into validation, more of a like, here's what I'd like to see and here's what actually happens kind of a moment. But maybe she's moved beyond that. I don't know.
That's an interesting suggestion. Yeah,
that would be fun. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
You go ahead. Just keep clicking. One of these days down the road.
Yep, absolutely. I wanted to ask you too about the couple of projects you've had ongoing for a while now. That's Blood and Bones and Unhappy White Girls. What's going on with that?
That's fun. Yeah.
When are those coming out?
I am pushing for a 2016 release date, sometime in 2016.
Okay.
I want both those books out there. It's been way too long. Just to let people know, those are two products that I did on Kickstarter. Blood and Bones, the whole book is completely drawn, colored. I just need to finish the lettering and get it printed. That costs money. Unhappy White Girls, though, I'm looking for a colorist to complete the rest of the book. Half of it's colored. So I'm throwing that out there to the world.
And so where should the world respond if they want to color your book?
ChristianBeranek@gmail.com.
Okay, and go ahead and spell that, and we'll see.
ChristianBeranek @gmail.com.
Okay, all right. So any ambitious colorists out there? You heard that she's looking for a color. Okay, anything else coming up? Any other new projects?
Oh, I hope there's a lot more than that, but I'm working on it.
Okay. Now, Kelci, I want to ask you a bit about your comics. So, Charlie and Clow, I guess first. Tell us a bit about Charlie and Clow.
Charlie and Clow is a story about your friendly neighborhood goth punks. Because they're just basically a black punk girl and a goth guy fighting demons, essentially.
Well, okay, but wait. There's a little more to Clow than that, no?
Yeah, but I kind of don't want to
spoilers.
Spoil it.
Okay, spoilers. Not everyone else just went and binge read webcomics for the last 48 hours. So now, I got to ask you though, was I the only one that thought in Clow's first appearance that was Roxy? Because that was my comment, if you remember that.
No, I remember your comments, and no, you're not the only one.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that.
I actually drew Charlie and Clow into the background of a validation strip. It was the first appearance of Bo, actually, and a lot of people, the comments were split between Roxy and Charlie and Clow.
Okay, now I remember that. I remember that, and the thing was, I hadn't read Charlie. I mean, because I had read it up to about that point, way back when. And then I just recently read it through the end of the first chapter. But yeah, I didn't know what people were talking about because I had forgotten about what I had read way back when. But yeah, I know Charlie. That makes total sense now. Oh my God. Okay, because everyone was saying, oh yeah, he's gonna get his ass kicked or whatever, and I'm like, well, Roxy's not. I'm like, why? Yeah, I totally missed that. Now I get
commenters that caught that it was Charlie and Clow in the corner there. I hate when my character designs look the same. So in chapter 2, Clow is going to get a haircut.
Oh.
So his hair is going to be styled differently because I do not want people to confuse him with Roxy anymore. Roxy is a good person to be confused with, but I want Clow to be able to have his own character design.
Sure. Right. Now, okay, got to ask you a little bit about Seeing Him. This one's newer. This one hasn't gotten quite as far into it as Charlie and Clow. But what's Seeing Him all about?
Seeing Him is about a nerdy business owner named Kate, who owns the local skating rink, and Adam, who is a transgender man who is a doctor, and they meet and they fall in love. And there's shenanigans and malarkey that they go on with their friends.
Sure.
There is going to be at one point a midnight roller derby, roller hockey type tournament going on. Okay. I'm not going to spoil what's going to happen.
Right. Now, would it be now? I was sold almost right from the start on the on one of the setups, and you said it very diplomatically there, but really, trans man gynecologist.
Yes.
Really.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great. I mean, and again, how much you go for the low hanging fruit on the humor on that one, but wow.
Well,
there's a lot of potential there.
The thing is that Kia and I try to not take ourselves very seriously, and the goal with seeing him is that it's fun and like, yeah, it'll have some serious moments, but we just want this to be kind of like a lighthearted, funny story, because there's like too many stories about transgender people that are like super duper serious, or else like paint them as like a prop.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So we wanted to do something a bit different with seeing him and have the both of them and their relationship be the focus instead of like having his transition be the focus.
Okay.
Because like by the time that the story starts, he's been living as a man full time for several years now. Like he transitioned during medical school.
Okay.
And yeah, as for the fact that he's
and picked gynecology of all things.
Okay. There might be a backstory there. Kia hasn't told me if there's like a backstory explanation for that. But for the most part, we're kind of using it as like, we're not going to take ourselves too seriously.
Got that, but
we're aware of the joke. We are aware.
Okay. Well, I got that. I've got Kelci D. Crawford bookmarked now, so I'll be keeping my eyes out for those. Now, you also have a lot of comic shorts, 5 to 10 issue type stories, and I'm wondering if you have any future plans for some of those. And in particular, I think it was called Shadow and Strike. There were 2 of those that I thought, wow, this is a great setup, and then it kind of ends. I was wondering if there was any plans to continue any of those.
There were.
Okay, so not any. So
yeah. The thing is that when I got to actually scripting out the stories, I looked at them and I went, these basic ideas and themes could be better served with other characters in different scenarios.
Oh, okay.
And as I scripted out those situations, I was like, this definitely works a lot better. So those stories, Shadow and Strike, are going to be their own little standalone thing. They're more than likely not going to be like any sequel comics that come afterwards.
Okay, because they were great setups. I mean, I dug the setups, then it ended up. Well, I didn't get it at first because I didn't realize that one. Because, I was probably slow that morning, and I didn't realize that one story went into the other. So it's like the girl gets the shadow, and then suddenly we're talking about cyborgs escaping, and I was like, "What the hell happened? Wait a second, did I miss something?"
That's kind of my fault.
I was like, "Wait, was that the same girl? Did she grow up?"
To be like,
so once I caught on to that, I was like, "Oh, I get it now." But
yeah,
I was reading it on my phone, so it wasn't.
Sorry, that was my fault. That's poor web design. That's entirely me. I will fix it so that it's a bit more obvious that they're separate stories.
There was a title. I should have been paying attention, but like I said, I might have been before coffee. I don't know. And then you also have several that look like they were taken down. Were those never started, or are there any plans to do anything with those? There were several that were.
The only one that I think I recall taking down was The Legend of Jamie Roberts. Yeah, that one I took down because I originally just posted the 6-page prologue to draft Q of the story. Right now, it's got like 17 million different drafts and iterations, and I haven't picked out which one that I like the best. So I took that down because I was like, it's old, the artwork is not the best, and it's like, the story that it was telling is not the story that I want to like focus on right away.
Gotcha.
So I just took that down.
Now I also, and I haven't quite finished it. I've only read the first part of it, but what's the deal with Johnson and Sir?
You're not the first person to ask about that.
I mean, I don't even know how else to put it. I'm going, wow, this is the most fucked up thing I've read in a long time. But I mean, it's hilarious. Don't get me wrong. It's really funny. But I'm just like, I'm like, wow, this is out there. So what's going on? What is going on with Johnson and Sir? What is that all about?
Johnson and Sir originally started as an inside joke between my little sister Kia and myself, because we would play Jack 2 from the Jack and Daxter trilogy on the PS2.
Okay.
And like we would occasionally like drive through town and we would hear the Crimson Guard, who were like the bad guys of the video game, like talk to each other via radio as we passed by them. And we just started shooting the shit and making up dialogue that two of the soldiers would like say to each other, and they turned into Johnson and Sir.
Okay.
And then, and then that kind of like sat up in my brain part as like brain crack for a couple of years. And then and then I was hanging out with my older sister and my boyfriend at the time. And I was like, I'm thinking about starting a webcomic. And Kristen was like, well, why don't you try Johnson and Sir? Because that shit cracked me up.
Right. Oh, it was funny. It was funny, no doubt.
Well, thank you. The first couple of strips were actually written by Kristen and Kia, especially the Johnson, why are your sights set on a cow?
Oh.
It's bait, sir, for the dragon. What? We wanted to capture a T-Rex, but we didn't have a goat.
Well, the other one was when he's. I love my favorite one two so far. One was the mustache gag with the give me back my mustache, and then that was and then the other one was it was such a simple setup, but he's going through and hey Watkins and hey Joseph and hey Smith and then he gets to Johnson and he's like in a chicken outfit, like flying a balloon and has a giant lollipop or I don't know, rubber chicken. It was a rubber chicken and I mean it was just absurd. And he's just like Johnson and just keeps walking.
Exactly. And it's like, I try not to take myself too seriously with Johnson and Sir because it's
you don't say.
It's a fun romp. It's a fun inside joke. It's entirely gag driven. Like
right.
How far are you into that webcomic?
Bad Mustache Day. That was it. It was Bad Mustache Day.
Yes, I love that one.
that was because it was they were talking about a bad hair day, and of course he's bald. But he had a bad mustache day. That was
bad mustache day.
right. So Christian, now earlier, and this is shifting gears. So earlier you'd mentioned working at Disney, and I know you and I have talked a bit about that in the past. But so tell us a bit about what you're doing, and I'm also looking for some anti-corporatism here regarding your departure. So tell us a little bit about that. What's the story there?
1 second. I have to hug my Joe. And be prepared. Okay. Go for it.
Gosh, it's not that bad.
I have been braced for the evil that is soon to spew.
Brace yourself. I know. Back in 2007, my former business partner, his name is Ahmed Zappa, we put together a deal for Disney. It was called Kingdom Comics, and we were going to go into the Disney vaults, which we did. We, of course, patted Walt Disney's frozen head.
Wait, the Disney Vault is an actual thing?
What's that?
I assume the Disney Vault was just like figurative. That's an actual thing?
No, it's figurative.
Oh, okay.
Although we did get this big, massive book that has every single thing that Disney ever produced. So we went through the book and picked like a bunch of like titles that we wanted to reimagine, or I was more excited about the ones that weren't like the reboots, but were stories that took place like 20 years after the fact, kind of like what they did with Tron recently, with Tron Legacy.
Okay.
They tied that back in. I was more interested in doing that instead of like remakes and reboots and all that.
Right.
So we were actually able to get some momentum going in the first year or so. And we were working with crazy names, guys like Neil Gaiman, Peter David, Michael Uslan, the executive producer for all the Batman movies, a good personal friend, and a fellow Yankee fan. So if Michael's listening, yay, go Yankees.
Suddenly I like Batman a little bit less.
He's a massive Yankee fan. Maybe that's why we get along so well.
Well, I can't, you know what, I can't say anything about the Red Sox the way they're doing this year, but I'll just, the Tigers, on the other hand, I think still have a shot, so we'll see. But
well, they faltered a little bit, but they might get back into it.
They have a team, though. The Red Sox are pathetic. So anyway, but go on, but that has nothing to do with Disney.
But the Red Sox can finish last one year, and then the next year win the World Series, so,
That team had
forever.
Well, not to derail too far, but the 2013 Sox had no business winning the World Series, and even I know that.
Hey, but what a great thing for the city, you know? That's true.
So back to Disney. So
Disney.
Right.
But we were chugging along, and we were going to announce our first. And these books were going to be made into movies too. That was the whole thing. Like these are like, this is back in. I'm sort of guilty for helping educate Hollywood on how to make comics into movies. So I was there for 6 years in LA, working with studios, working with producers, educating them about how awesome comic books are and how comic books be like great to make into movies, which I wish that they would call me now. I would appreciate a little thank you for helping them get to that point.
Right.
Not that I'm bitter, but anyway. So I was helping educate Disney on the massive value of comic books. And I was on the lot. We were working with the studio president, all these different people.
Right.
We were just ready to announce our first project, which is going to be a graphic novel that we were going to produce as a movie, and then launch what Disney. We were going to launch the Disney superhero universe. They wanted to create their own superheroes based on their own titles because they wanted to compete with Marvel and DC.
Yeah. We
were set to announce our first title. The next morning, Disney buys Marvel. And I'm just like, we're screwed. We're absolutely screwed. We were.
Oh, wow. Yeah, Thor's hammer came down on you guys hard there. That was you were not going to compete with Marvel. That's for sure.
No.
Wow. No, I mean DC can't compete with Marvel.
No.
They're going to.
Well, now hold on a second. I'm a DC fan. Probably because I'm still 8 years old. So I am a DC.
Yeah, they've had some good hits recently. Like with their recent run of Batgirl, I read the first couple of issues of Gotham Academy, and I actually picked up the first issue of Bizarro, and Bizarro it's for a gag comic, it's good. Yeah. I mean, what DC is doing there. Okay.
Well, there was something in there, and again, kind of like the end is near because, and it's funny because this was the other reason that dealers hit me because I was collecting baseball cards in the late '80s, comic books in the mid '90s, and I got into toys in the late '90s. So I hit every single one of those. And the only saving grace is that I was never thinking of it as an investment to me, and I learned that with baseball cards. It was like you collect it to have fun. If you enjoy it. It doesn't matter if you ever make your money back because you had fun doing it, and that's what you're paying for. And if you keep that in perspective, then again, when the market bottoms out, hey, cheap stuff, there's no real downside for you. But it was funny because I could see, and especially with comic books, and the guy in Dealers hit it perfectly when he was talking. Or was it Comic Book Mafia, where he was talking about the gimmicky covers and the chrome covers and the multiple copies.
That's Comic Book Mafia.
Yeah, and I remember that because I was just like, as soon as you see 6 different issues of the same book come out, it's like, okay, they're running out of ideas. This is they're getting desperate now. Starting to crash.
How many variant covers were for Star Wars #1 recently? Wasn't it like 113 different variant covers?
God. Oh, Lord. I'm really starting to empathize with Fakir, the runner of the comic shop in Validation.
Yes.
There are 61 new titles from the big 2. I am swamped.
and I can remember, I mean, they've done back in the 70s and early 80s, they did crossovers, Spider-Man and Batman, Hulk and Superman. But, but it was a rare thing. And now it's like every single company's crossed over with every other one, and the multiple reboots at DC are just like, guys, you don't need new characters, you just need better stories. If you have new characters, the same crappy storylines, it's not going to work.
Well, hey, I mean that's true. Remember, what was it, Hulk 341? Is that what it was? Where it was Wolverine versus the Hulk. That was one issue.
Right.
And it was epic. And people still talk about that issue.
Yeah. Well, and it spun off ultimately a character equal to or even more classic, arguably, than Hulk.
Yeah,
in
well,
Wolverine.
that for a long time there, Wolverine was probably the most popular Marvel character. I don't know. I don't know that that's the case anymore.
Well, wait, the one you mentioned though, was that the first appearance, or are you talking about one later?
No, not the first appearance.
Oh, okay, okay.
This is the one that McFarlane drew.
Okay, I know the one you're talking about. Yeah.
The fight, that was
right.
so good. So good. And that was one issue. Maybe there's a setup in the issue before it, maybe, if I remember correctly, but the fight was one issue.
Right.
It wasn't dragged out over 6 issues to try to get a trade paperback that they could sell forever.
Like Doomsday.
Exactly. Right now, to me, it just feels like they're all about just milking the fan base, getting as much money as they can from them, diluting the stories out, and just like making them as padded as possible to get that paperback that they can put in bookstores.
Yep.
That's been going on for 15 years now, 20 years. I mean,
Yeah.
they've been designing these stories, and instead of just telling great stories,
Yeah.
you know, they have to like follow. Here's your corporate rant. You're finally getting it. Here we go. Anti-corporatism. Yay.
Here we go.
So instead of just taking chances and telling great stories, I mean, the great thing about comic books is you can do anything in them. There is no budget to a comic book.
Right.
But the moment they started talking about, I think an editor said this at some point, I'm a custodian of a brand. Like I was talking about how I was a custodian of Roxy.
Yeah,
It's kind of like a little bit of like an inside joke to that.
Okay.
They're custodians of these great legacies.
Yeah.
Of these great brands, and
it stops being art at that point.
It becomes fucking boring. Is what it is to me.
Yep.
And you sound like a fool when you tell people that I'm a custodian of a brand.
Right.
Like,
hey, your job title, Jesus.
Yeah. Just say, hey.
I mean, Superman is. I mean, like, you know, the S shield and whatever. Yes, it's a corporate logo, but if you reduce it to that, you lose everything that Superman is, for example, or you know.
Exactly, and Superman does have the character, and what drives me nuts is like when people are like they think that the logo is the character and completely ignore the character.
Well, and what's the point? And this is where and again, I'm a DC guy, but I've known for the longest time that Justice League is not, I don't believe will translate well to the big screen the way that the Marvel characters have, for 2 reasons. One, the Marvel characters have always been a little bit more blue collar, just a little bit more down to earth, not so, strong in the Marvel universe is 100 tons. Strong in the DC universe is like juggling planets. And so it's like, and you can't really come up with that much, but what is the point of making Superman dark and gritty and then pairing him with Batman? There's no contrast there. There's no balance. There's no conflict at that point. You need Superman to be that beacon of hope and Batman to be that sort of cynicism to have any kind of chemistry. And that's what they did right in the Avengers, is they had that chemistry between the characters. But I don't see that in Justice League. I don't see any potential there.
We will see. I mean, I don't like the color palette of Man of Steel. It's just so dark and grimy. And obviously, that's related to what, since Chris Nolan was a producer on Man of Steel. And then I get dark and gritty look for the Dark Knight stuff.
Yeah, it worked.
I actually think that Dark Knight Rises lost a bit of that grittiness.
Yep.
It felt way more weird and cartoony than the second one, because the second one was like so grounded and all. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah.
The third one, Dark Knight Rises, it was a little bit more cartoony with Bane and this weird convoluted setup with the No Man's Land storyline that they took from.
I hate the twist that they had with Bane's character at the end. You turned a badass into a lovesick puppy.
Right. And I just want to see somebody do Nightfall. I mean, I just want to see let everyone out of Arkham Asylum, take them all, do your 1 episodes as he deals with each one at a time, and then have him run the gauntlet at the end and get broken. It was like, that was such a great. But I can't say much for the 2 that followed. What was it? Knight's Quest and Knight's End were kind of lame, but but I'm just waiting for someone to do Bane some justice with a Vengeance of Bane and Nightfall story.
That would be great, but
I'm not going to hold my breath on.
No. He's been misused. he was the one thing I think the animated series back in the early 90s, which kind of rebooted a lot of interest in Batman. He was the one thing they just totally got wrong. The episode with him was so disappointing. And then, of course, when they just threw him in as an extra in that awful, I can't remember if it was the third one or the fourth one, but that awful.
Are you talking about Batman and Robin?
Yeah.
Oh.
You know, it was, well, you know what it was when we went to see I went to Batman Forever with some friends of mine. We were all comic book fans. I was a huge Batman fan. And like for a while, we just had so much anticipation because we thought it was so well cast. Thought Tommy Lee Jones, perfect guy to play that. And especially if you think about how Harvey Dent was presented in the comic books, it's like, yeah, that's Tommy Lee Jones, at least especially at that time, because he was younger. This was 20 years ago. But and Jim Carrey should have been a good Riddler, although he was horrible. But that wasn't what I was picturing in my head. And within 30 seconds in, I mean, it wasn't even like Phantom Menace where it took us a while to figure out this movie sucks. It was like 20, 30 seconds in, we're looking at each other going, oh, this is going to be awful, isn't it? It's like, yeah, this sucks. This is dumb. And we sat through the whole thing, but it was like, it's just like, why did we even, I can't even believe we made it through. And I didn't bother. The fourth one, I think I saw on a plane or something.
I walked out of Batman and Robin. It's back to,
I would love to do a drinking game to Batman and Robin, to be perfectly honest.
That's the only way to get through it. It's so insane.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the 1968 Batman was better than Batman and Robin.
Oh, I can watch that all the way through. I can watch the 68 with the shark repellent.
Yeah. The shark repellent. That's right.
Bat shark repellent. Like,
wow.
I mean, I haven't seen it, but that sounds amazing.
You haven't seen it?
I mean, I get the references to it. Like, I know who Eartha Kitt is.
No, well, Eartha Kitt wasn't in it. Eartha Kitt wasn't in the movie. That was, it Lee Merriweather or was it Julie Newmar? It was Julie Newmar.
Okay, my mind was on the TV show.
Yeah. No, if you haven't seen the movie, you should see it.
Yeah.
And definitely, if you want to make a drinking game, any holy anything mentioned by Robin, take a drink. And if your liver is not sitting next to you drinking a cup of coffee by the end of the movie, okay,
although I have to add the caveat when watching Batman and Robin: do not take a shot anytime that there is a one-liner, or you will be dead within the first 10 minutes.
God! And, it's just it was and Burton got. I mean, I'm not a fan of the Burton ones, and I'm not a fan of Nicholson's Joker. Actually, I mean, it was good, but I felt kind of like kind of a swing and a miss. Not perfect, but acceptable. But it was like the one thing he did right was to get rid of all the camp. Basically, take it seriously, make it dark. It was a little too Burton, a little too much Tim Burton, I think, especially the second one, especially Batman Returns. But it was good, largely because he took it seriously and got rid of all the camp. And then the Schumacher movies it lost all of the dark and gritty, and all of the Burton was gone. I mean, who the hell fights with neon glowing sticks? Like, what? Why? How is that even a thing outside of the Star Wars universe?
Why do the bat suits have nipples on them?
Yeah, and the one suit that should have fat nipples, the Batgirl costume, doesn't have it.
Well, no. If the Batgirl costume had nipples, that would have been a rated R movie. Come on.
It probably wouldn't even have made it into theaters. Let's be honest. Women have nipples. My childhood has been ruined.
Those movies are so terrible. Oh my God.
I mean, I've seen people make good reviews and try to salvage Phantom Menace, Jurassic Park 3, some movies that were bad but you cannot. It's
well, I did like the first. I did like the one with Michael Keaton, the first one.
Yeah, no, those were good.
Jack Nicholson's character was a little. It didn't feel like, because I think in hindsight, if you're comparing him to Heath Ledger's Joker, there's no comparison. Heath Ledger's Joker is amazing.
Well, yeah, but I would actually put him behind Cesar Romero, even. Just in terms of being true to the comic book. It was fun to watch Jack Nicholson, just chew up the scenery. It was entertaining. But to me, he didn't match any Joker that I remember from the story. I didn't get that vibe from him. And I mean, Ledger didn't really either, but I think Ledger had the spirit of him down a little bit better. And if you go back to Cesar Romero back in the 60s, yeah, it's campy and it's goofy, but it matches the character in the comic books to a T. I mean, that's what the comic books were at the time. Batman was one of the really campy comic books among DC. So,
I'm with you. I'm with you on that.
But,
I'm with you.
And again, I'll take Burgess Meredith playing the Penguin over Danny DeVito any day too.
Well, Burgess Meredith is awesome, and he gave 110% to everything he ever did.
Right, so, right.
I love Danny DeVito and Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah. It wasn't his fault. It was just they completely misimagined the Penguin, and they also didn't realize that both Penguin and Catwoman are good enough characters to carry. Why was it always a villain team up except for the Joker? He always gets his own. Well, I guess he didn't in the Ledger version because he had him in Two-Face, but it's like they always had to have multiple villains, and it's like just focus on one, man. Tell a good story. It's not about just throwing all the characters in there.
Well, that's what happened with Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
They threw way too characters.
Yeah. But that's another one that, I haven't seen the most recent one. I haven't seen the one with Shocker, but I didn't think Spider-Man, and I guess part of it is that I didn't see it in the theater. I made a copy, don't listen to this FBI, but I made a copy of the DVD and I put it on my shelf, and it sat there for probably 2 or 3 years. And I mean, it had been a year out of theaters at the time. And I never watched it, but for all that time, I'm hearing everybody hate on it and, hey, this is so awful, whatever. And eventually I'm like, well, I got to watch it at some point because I just, I was watching some of the other Marvel movies. So I put it in. And I guess when you've heard people hating on something for that long, suddenly it seems okay. It was I'm not saying it was good. I'm not saying oh yeah, this would have totally.
It wasn't terrible. It's
no,
not
it
Batman
was
and Robin terrible.
Right.
Oh
no.
Now the second Spider-Man is a masterpiece.
The second
Doc Ock.
My complaint about that. My complaint about it is there's way too much screaming.
Okay, well,
Kirsten Dunst and every other female character is screaming every 15 seconds for the first 20 minutes of the movie. And it's just there's too much screaming.
Like Kate Capshaw and Indiana Jones.
Exactly. Too much screaming.
He ruined it because that's actually a really dark movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
It could have been great if she toned it down a little bit.
It could have been great if she toned it down. It could have been great with Karen Allen at the time.
Well, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
But it couldn't because it took it. Well, I wonder if it took place the year. Well, but I wonder if that was only because Karen Allen wasn't in it, so they just slapped the year before when they did the opening title because there was no other reason that had to be a prequel. There was no setup or anything.
There wasn't. No, it took place in 1934 or something.
Something I thought it was 37 and 38 or something like that. It was before the war. It was just before the war. So it was late enough along that we knew we were supposed to hate Nazis, but we weren't yet at war with them. I think at least by the first two.
That movie freaked me out with Mola Ram taking the guy's.
Great villain though! Great villain.
He was great. The look on his face, he was amazing looking.
And the line, and I mean, I'm waiting for my life to present me with with an opportunity to steal the line of "Prepare to meet Kali in hell." And I'm just, that is awesome. That is the most badass line ever, in my opinion.
Harrison Ford, when he delivers I'll see you in hell or meet you in hell, because he said then I'll see you in hell in Empire Strikes Back to the guy, you're taunting him for easy before he hit the first marker.
That's right.
I'll see you in hell. It's Harrison Ford just knows how to deliver those lines.
Oh yeah.
Nobody else has ever delivered those lines in that way before.
Right. And they don't need to give him the cheesy one-liners because they give him the badass stuff, the good stuff, and he just, he's awesome with it. I know. I mean, come on, he made that shit up on the fly. I mean, come on. Which is to say he's a better writer than George Lucas, which is roughly like saying he's taller than Danny DeVito, but no, I'm just kidding. Lucas isn't a bad writer. Lucas is actually a great storyteller. It's just he absolutely should have hired somebody else to direct those first 3 movies there.
Yeah, he needed some help. He shouldn't have done all his own.
Yeah. And so what do you think of what do you and I guess both of you guys, what do you think about the upcoming episode 7? What are your hopes, expectations, thoughts, predictions?
It's a thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I gotta tell you, I saw the prequels and I was like, anyone want to play Star Wars figures? Like I was totally right. Like I was sucked right back in. I didn't think I would be, but I was. It sucked me right back in.
I was totally sucked back in 1999, 88, 99. I camped outside for Phantom Menace tickets. Why did I do that? Didn't have to. I was outside overnight with an umbrella in the rain, waiting to get buy tickets for this movie.
Right.
And I mean, that was people were lined up waiting to watch it, like on the side of the street for a month in LA. It was crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know if that, we're still like a little ways out. And this is a different time too. We've got the internet. There's other distractions.
Yeah.
I think it's going to make a lot of money. I know that.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, all the prequels did.
That's kind of like saying that water is wet.
Yeah.
But why is Jurassic World making so much money? I have not seen it yet.
Chris Pratt is why Jurassic World is making money.
No, you know what? You've got a point, Kelci, but I think that was inevitable. That was bound to make money, just because again, it was the custodian of a brand. It was the franchise, and they could have done anything. It was, in fact, if you look at Jurassic Park 3. And I saw a video recently. Nostalgia Critic was doing his review of Jurassic Park 3, and he's basically saying it's like a paint by numbers. You have to have the big dinosaur fight. You have to have the guys running away. You have to have the awkward talk between old person and young person at some point. And it was like he was just sort of like showing how it was basically it was like fan fiction basically. They just grabbed a bunch of elements and crammed them together, and that was. And yet that was successful. That made its money.
It was filling in a checklist.
Yeah, exactly.
Filling in a checklist to ensure big bucks.
That's what I've heard of Jurassic World is. It's basically just a checklist down the road, like.
Yeah. Okay. You know what would have sold me for Jurassic World if the Velociraptors were like what we know of them scientifically today, which, as we know them scientifically today, they're basically chicken-sized feathered. Like,
well, but how lame is that?
No, it's adorable. Read the comic manly guys doing manly things to see like the feathery velociraptor chickens in action, because they are adorable.
Well, they can be the protagonists of Thoughtful Dinosaur, I guess.
There you go, Thoughtful Dinosaur.
All right. So before we wrap up, just to leave comics and whatnot for a little while. So it's a political show. I got to hit you guys up on a couple things. It's been a pretty good week overall. Does your all's Facebook feed look like a war broke out between the Confederacy and a Skittles factory? Because
yeah, it's pretty bright on there, which is cool.
Well, no, Team Skittles is definitely winning. The Confederacy's definitely on its way out finally, it seems.
Oh, Lordy. I don't even check my personal Facebook feed anymore. I basically just hop on there to like update the validation page, update my art page, and then I leave. I actually have a thing on my Google Chrome browser that's like, it's a Stay Focused app, which, by the way, if you haven't used it yet, use it. It's amazing, because what it does is it lists like a list of sites for you to block, and you're allowed to have like 10 or 15 minutes on those blocked sites a day. And if you go over that time limit, it just shuts off. And it's like, oh, you can't go on this website anymore. You got to stay focused.
I couldn't function. I couldn't function. I need my fix.
Oh my God, it is amazing. It saved me from going down the rabbit hole of Tumblr and Facebook and Twitter, because if I'm not careful, I get sucked into those so quickly.
I resisted Facebook for the longest time, but yeah, I'm pretty much hooked now. Tumblr, I still find Tumblr too cumbersome, and maybe I'm getting old or something, but I don't get it. It doesn't. I find it very awkward. And Twitter,
I saw a post that described Tumblr fairly accurately. That it was like, this is what happens when you get a bunch of teenagers together into a crowded room. And then somebody was like, well, it's either this or Lord of the Flies.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, of the two, I would rather have Tumblr. And yeah, Tumblr is pretty much like a place where like artsy people and teenagers can get together and have a conversation and like throw shit at the wall to see what sticks.
That's pretty much what Tumblr is. Throw it at the wall, see what sticks.
Yeah.
So then, in terms of throwing in the wall, and like I said, Team Skittles is winning over the Confederacy. So what's the next battle in the as Bill O'Reilly puts it, the radical gay agenda there? What's are we going back to basic discrimination again?
I didn't know there was a gay agenda. I missed the 5 o'clock meeting. Jesus. Why didn't somebody give me the pamphlet or the thing? I mean, crap.
Come on,
I've been missing out on so much.
Don't you watch Fox? They tell you all about it.
I don't watch network TV. I am one of those weirdo young people that doesn't watch TV anymore. Most of my entertainment comes from YouTube and Tumblr nowadays.
I hear you.
I actually just gave some comments to Fox News today. I did an interview with them this morning.
No kidding.
About Caitlyn Jenner. So that Diana Falzone. Well, the person who interviewed me, Diana Falzone, she works over there. She's pretty great, pretty understanding.
Yeah, you told me about her before.
Yeah, she's cool.
Person. Yeah,
she is cool. And then I actually worked with one of the Fox News people out in Los Angeles on some projects, and he was on the news desk there. And then another Fox writer and I have another product together. So I have.
Well, but these are local affiliates, right? Or is this the Fox News channel, the cable channel?
Diana works for the she does stuff on the web, and she's been on like Red Eye and a bunch of other shows on the channel, and she's in New York.
Oh, okay.
And the other person was the news chief in L.A., and then the other person that I'm working with is in Florida. He just does articles for the website.
Oh, okay.
His name is Scott Pensky. He's an extremely good writer. I was asked for some comments about Caitlyn Jenner, so the interview will be out at some point. Maybe I'll have a link up at next week sometime, perhaps. But anyway, it's nice to see the Skittles.
Don't know if that's the right way to put it, but okay.
Did you watch John Oliver last Sunday night?
I have not. I've been kind of passing that video around as well, and I haven't seen the whole thing yet. I haven't had time to sort of sit down and go through it all. But yeah, that was it seemed to hit it right on the head.
That's the next battle.
Yeah. Okay.
Is transgender rights, and he laid down succinctly everything you need to know about it so incredibly well. I was absolutely, because usually when I see a reporter talk about transgender stuff, I want to turn it off after 1 minute. But how he handled it, his attention to detail, the research, how he talked about it, how he laid down all of his thoughts and what could happen, what things could be done. It was 110% great. It was one of the greatest things I've ever seen about that subject. So I think that's the next battle, and hopefully our gay friends will support us now that they've won all their battles.
Right.
Hopefully they'll come back, because there were trans people there at Stonewall.
Absolutely.
That's what they always. Oh yeah. There were trans people there, and I think that over the years the gay community in a lot of ways has forgotten about us. And as they have fought their battles, it doesn't feel like that they've helped us, picked us up along the way.
Well, and I asked a couple guests on the show 2 weeks ago about their thoughts on the HRC, and you and I have talked about the HRC before, and as I have with just about everybody that I've had on, and I think you've definitely been thrown under the bus crowd. Oh yeah, historically.
For sure. So hopefully now that this great victory, and it is an amazing victory. I mean, I was celebrating on Friday about it. I think it's great.
Yeah, I'm really happy that my best friend from high school's wedding is now officially recognized in all 50 states. I'm super happy for her.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Well, and I think it also shows that the separation of church and state argument and the control of I think at this point, the religious right has become, the Republicans have been riding that tiger for so long, and they've fallen off and they're getting mauled because the folks on the religious right are alienating the middle, but at the same time, they're the ones. If you're going to, you can't win representing only the 1%. The only reason that working class white people have voted Republican is because of the religious issues. And yet to hang on to them, they've had to become so extreme. And, Ted Cruz is out there saying he wants to make gay marriage one of the front and center issues for 2016. And I'm like, are you suicidal? This is a done deal. You were handed a gift by the Supreme Court. You can basically ignore what is a losing issue for you. And he wants to keep fighting that battle. And he's not the only one.
Well, it's like It's like they keep fighting over. They keep bringing up Obamacare. They keep bringing up Benghazi. It's like,
I am so tired of them talking about Obamacare. I swear to God, if another Republican comes up to me at my day job and wants to rant at me about Obamacare, I will just punch them in the teeth.
I don't even, you know what? You can't even really, because, that awful Obamacare, or as it's otherwise known, insurance. And it's like, and the funny thing is, you're having the same argument that you've been having with insurance companies forever, but now it's Obama's fault. It's like, there's no new problem that this creates. It does perpetuate the old problems to some extent. And that's why I think it's okay when the liberals criticize it. But I don't want to hear any complaints from the pro-big business party when the problems are the ones that have always been there.
Don't even get me started.
I think that they need to choose some different battles here.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know whether and the one thing I will say, and it's a perverse sign of progress. But as they, at least as mainline Republicans and mainline even the Christians have sort of given up on gay marriage. They've seen that momentum building for a while. It was inevitable, I think, and I think once they realized that, though, suddenly everybody knows about transgender people now. That's where their sights are set now. That's where it's gonna, and suddenly we're having bathroom bills and we're having all this anti-trans public school regulations coming out, and suddenly they're arguing. They're actually creating these fights that didn't exist 5 years ago, 3 years ago, even. They existed, but not at the national level, not at a level in which a non-trans person would even be aware of them.
Yeah, that's the Republican strategy. Make up an argument that didn't exist 5 years ago and see if the poor people will fight over it.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's no question they will, because they've been doing it for 30 years.
Yeah, it's like, George Carlin put it spot on in one of his stand-up skits where he was like, the rich will have the poor fight amongst themselves so that the rich can take the money and run off with it.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, that's how they are.
Well, what was it? The rich
emphasize the differences.
The rich have all the money, pay none of the taxes. The middle class pays all of the taxes, does all of the work. The poor are there just to scare the shit out of the middle class, keep them showing up at those jobs.
George Carlin was amazing.
I actually got to see him live. He came to my then hometown a few years, like a year before he died. He came to my town and he gave a stand-up skit, and I saw it, and he was a very bitter old man towards the end of his life.
He was. I miss him. I never saw him, and he was one of those guys that was kind of on my list, and I never did. And then when I heard when he did, because he died pretty suddenly, and it was like
yeah.
I got a chance to see him, thankfully. Fortunately, I got a chance to see him. And it was funny because my friends had said, hey, we're going to go see him. And I got my ticket late, so I wasn't sitting with them. But my ticket was first row. So they were all the way up in the balcony, way back here. And I'm sitting down here at the first row. I just look back and wave, like, hey. Big dog. It was really fantastic.
Well, you know what, guys? It's been a lot of fun. Let's plug the websites again. You got let's go through them. Validationcomic.com.
Correct.
There's also the webcomicfactory.com.
Webcomicfactory.com, yes. And Kelci?
You can find all of the webcomics that I do at kelcidcrawford.com. KELCID Crawford. KelciDCrawford.com.
And Validation's got a Patreon up. That's right. Is that right?
Yeah, that's actually connected from our website.
Okay, good. So everybody check that out. Validationcomic.com. Support the arts. Hit that Patreon up. Kelci, Christian, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having us.
We ran a bit long tonight, but I appreciate everybody who stuck around. As always, if you have any questions or comments about anything you've heard here tonight, or suggestions for future shows, guests, or topics, I'd love to hear from you. You can email me at niceguy9418@usa.com, friend me on Facebook at Eddie Cabot, or leave a comment on my blog at eddiecabot.blogspot.com. Thank you for tuning in, and enjoy the rest of your evening here on Rainbow Radio.